Welcome back to English Through Wisdom. I hope you learned something valuable from our last lesson. It is wonderful to have you here again today.
By the time Li Wei turned 24, he had already failed 4 times. 4 businesses, 4 dreams, 4 mornings when he woke up and quietly told himself this would be the last time he tried anything. He believed the world rewarded speed. He believed the fastest man always won the race. Then he met an old man who owned nothing but a single copper coin, and everything he believed about success quietly began to fall apart. Years later, he finally understood the wisdom hidden behind that one ordinary morning. Welcome to English Through Wisdom. Here we learn English through powerful stories and timeless lessons from cultures around the world. Today we discover a story about patience, judgment, and the moment everything changed. The mountain town of Qingshui woke slowly, the way it always did. Smoke curled from breakfast fires. Cartwheels groaned along the stone road that connected the town to the trade routes winding through the valley below. And under the old banyan tree at the edge of the market square, an old man sat with his legs folded beneath him, a single copper coin resting in his open palm. Li Wei walked past that tree almost every morning, and almost every morning he barely noticed it. He had bigger things to think about. He was 24 years old, sharp-eyed, quick-tongued, and utterly certain that greatness was somewhere just ahead of him, waiting to be claimed. His father had died a poor farmer. His mother had spent her final years mending clothes for wealthier families, and Li Wei had promised himself, standing at his mother's grave, that he would never again watch someone he loved grow old with empty hands. So he traded tea. For 3 months he studied leaves, prices, harvest seasons, and buyers. Business was good. Then a rival undercut his prices, and Li Wei walked away calling the man a cheat and calling the whole tea trade a trap for fools. He traded silk. For 4 months he learned threads, weights, and the delicate art of pleasing wealthy customers. Then a shipment arrived damaged by rain, and Li Wei declared the silk trade cursed and swore he would never touch another bolt of cloth again. He tried pottery. He tried horses. Each time the first real obstacle arrived like a wall built directly across his path, and each time Li Wei looked at that wall, decided it was unfair, and turned around to search for an easier road. He never once asked himself why the wall kept appearing. It was on an ordinary afternoon, after his horse trading venture had collapsed under an unpaid debt, that Li Wei noticed something strange. The wealthiest merchants in Qingshui, men who owned warehouses and fleets of carts, men who barely nodded at farmers in the street, were walking to the edge of town every single morning to sit beside a man who owned nothing. Master Chen. Nobody could say exactly who he was. Some claimed he had once crossed the entire empire on foot. Some said he had given away a fortune. Others simply shrugged and said the old man had always been there, sitting under that tree, holding that same worn copper coin as far back as anyone could remember. Li Wei watched a merchant named Fang, a man who owned 3 warehouses, bow respectfully before sitting down beside the old man in the dirt. It made no sense to him. Fang owned a fortune. Master Chen owned a single coin, and yet it was Fang who bowed. One morning, frustrated and out of patience with his own failures, Li Wei sat down across from the old man without an invitation. "You are respected by the richest men in this town," Li Wei said, unable to keep the sharpness out of his voice. "So tell me, old man, if you are so wise, why are you still poor?" Master Chen did not answer right away. He turned the copper coin slowly between his fingers, the metal catching the morning light. "How many roads have you started, young man?" he finally asked. Li Wei opened his mouth to answer, then hesitated. "And how many of them have you actually finished?" Master Chen added, his voice quiet, almost gentle. Li Wei stood up so fast he nearly knocked over the small clay cup beside the old man's knee. He walked away without another word, his ears burning, his chest tight with something he refused to call shame. For weeks afterward, he avoided the banyan tree entirely, choosing a longer route through the eastern alley just to escape the sight of it. But the old man's question followed him anyway, into his sleep, into the silence of his empty stall, into every excuse he made to himself about bad luck and unfair competitors. Months passed. Li Wei tried one final venture, a small stall selling dyed cloth, and within weeks he was already scanning the horizon for the first sign of trouble, already rehearsing the speech he would give about why this business, too, had failed him rather than the other way around. Then, one gray morning heavy with the smell of coming rain, Li Wei saw Master Chen kneeling in the bare patch of soil behind his hut, pressing a single bamboo seed into the earth with his thumb. Li Wei laughed before he could stop himself. "One seed. You will be an old man's old man before that becomes a forest." Master Chen did not look up. He brushed the soil flat with the side of his palm. "Neither will the man who never plants," he said. The words landed somewhere Li Wei had no name for. He stood there a long moment, the cold morning air pressing against his face, watching the old man rise slowly, his knees cracking, and walk inside without another word. Li Wei did not sleep well that night. He kept seeing the small mound of disturbed earth, the single seed buried beneath it, patient and invisible and utterly unremarkable, and somehow more honest than every business plan he had ever abandoned. The next morning, for the first time in his life, Li Wei did not start something new. He returned to the cloth stall he had already written off as a failure, and instead of searching for an exit, he asked himself a different question. What is one small thing I can do better today? He fixed one torn edge of fabric a customer had complained about. He remembered one regular buyer's name and her daughter's upcoming wedding. He corrected one mistake in his accounts that he had been ignoring for weeks. It felt small, it felt almost embarrassingly small, but he did it again the next day, and the day after that. Weeks became months. The stall did not transform overnight, and there were mornings Li Wei still felt the old pull toward giving up, toward blaming the weather or the market or his own bad fortune. But each time that feeling rose in his chest, he thought of a single bamboo seed pressed into cold soil, and he stayed. Customers began to return not because his prices were the lowest, but because his word had become something they could rely on. A promise from Li Wei meant the cloth would arrive on the day he said it would, in the condition he described. Trust, it turned out, could not be bought quickly. It had to be planted and watered, one ordinary day at a time. Years passed the way years do, quietly and all at once. The small cloth stall became a shop. The shop became two shops, then a modest trading house that supplied merchants across 3 counties. Li Wei grew older, his hair touched with gray at the temples, his hands steady in a way they had never been at 24. One afternoon, a young apprentice named Su, no older than 18 and just as impatient as Li Wei had once been, found him standing at the edge of his warehouse, watching the carts being loaded for the morning's journey. "Master Li," the boy asked, "you are respected across the entire region now. What made you successful?" Li Wei reached into the inner pocket of his coat, where he kept a small cloth pouch he never opened in front of customers. Inside, it was a single worn copper coin, its edges smoothed by decades of handling. The same coin Master Chen had pressed into his palm on the day Li Wei finally returned to thank him, years after the bamboo seed and the long silence that followed it. "This," Li Wei said simply, closing his fingers around it. The boy frowned, confused. "A single coin?" "A single coin," Li Wei repeated. And for the first time, he told the boy the rest of the old man's story. How Master Chen had once been among the wealthiest merchants in the entire province, owner of warehouses that stretched along the river for half a mile. How a flood, sudden and merciless, had taken almost everything he owned in a single night, sweeping away silk, grain, and gold alike, leaving behind mud, wreckage, and one coin found lodged in the floorboards of his ruined home. Master Chen had kept that coin, not because it held any value, but because it reminded him every single morning for the rest of his life that fortune could vanish in an instant, but patience, discipline, and character could not be washed away by any flood. Wealth built quickly could disappear just as quickly. Wealth built one honest day at a time had roots too deep to wash away. That was why the richest men in Qingshui walked to a poor man's tree every morning. Not because he had money to offer them, but because he had already survived losing all of it, and had chosen deliberately to begin again from a single seed, a single step, a single coin. There is an old Chinese proverb that captures exactly what Master Chen was teaching, without ever raising his voice to say it. 千里之行，始于足下. In English, it means, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. This line comes from the Tao Te Ching, a foundational text of Chinese philosophy traditionally attributed to Laozi, believed to have been written around the 6th century BCE. It is one of the most widely quoted lines in Chinese thought, and its influence has spread across centuries and across the world, appearing in speeches, books, and everyday conversation far beyond China's borders. The proverb has survived for so long because it addresses something deeply, permanently human. We want the reward without the road. We imagine the destination in vivid detail, the wealth, the recognition, the ease, but we underestimate the quiet, unglamorous accumulation of single steps required to get there. Li Wei's story is a fictional illustration of this truth, but the truth itself is ancient and real. Every collapsed business he walked away from failed not because the world was unfair to him, but because he expected the 1,000th mile to appear before he had honestly walked the first one. Master Chen never lectured him about this. He simply planted a seed and let Li Wei watch what patience actually looks like when it is lived rather than explained. That is why this proverb has survived for centuries, while so many other pieces of advice have faded. It does not promise an easy road. It simply insists that the road, however long, begins exactly where you are standing right now, with whatever small step is available to you today. There is a version of Li Wei in almost everyone. Maybe you have started something, a course, a business, a relationship, a new habit, full of energy and certainty, only to walk away the moment it became difficult. Maybe you told yourself it was bad timing, or bad luck, or the wrong people, when the honest answer was simply that growth takes longer than we want it to. Have you ever judged someone too quickly, the way Li Wei judged Master Chen, assuming that a quiet, simple life must mean a small or failed one? Have you ever mistaken someone's patience for weakness, only to later realize it was actually their greatest strength? And there is a harder question underneath all of this. What is the one small step you have been avoiding? Not because it is difficult, but because it feels too small to matter. Master Chen never asked Li Wei to change everything at once. He asked him to notice the difference between starting and finishing, between planting and expecting a forest by morning. What would you plant today if you finally stopped waiting for the perfect moment to begin? We would genuinely like to know. Tell us in the comments about a time you almost gave up on something and what, if anything, made you stay. English Learning Section 1. Merchant. Meaning, a person who buys and sells goods, especially in large quantities, as a business. Example. Li Wei dreamed of becoming a respected merchant known throughout the region. 2. Impatient. Meaning, not willing to wait calmly, wanting something to happen quickly. Example. He was too impatient to wait for his business to grow slowly. 3. Obstacle. Meaning, something that blocks progress or makes a goal harder to reach. Example. The first real obstacle appeared, and he immediately wanted to quit. 4. Discipline. Meaning, the ability to control your behavior and keep working toward a goal, even when it is hard. Example. Success required discipline, not just talent or luck. 5. Apprentice. Meaning, a young person learning a skill or trade from an experienced person. Example. The apprentice asked his master what had made him successful. 6. Devastating. Meaning, causing severe damage or shock, extremely destructive. Example. The flood was devastating, and it destroyed almost everything Master Chen owned. 7. Fortune, meaning a large amount of money or wealth. Example, Master Chen once had a fortune, but he lost nearly all of it overnight. 8. Reputation, meaning the general opinion that people have about someone's character or reliability. Example, his reputation for honesty brought customers back again and again. 9. Reliable, meaning able to be trusted to do what is expected consistently. Example, customers valued him because he was reliable, not just cheap. 10. Humble, meaning not proud, modest about one's own importance or achievements. Example, despite his wealth, Master Chen lived a humble life under a simple tree. When persistence, meaning continued effort to do or achieve something even when it is difficult. Example, it was persistence, not talent, that finally made his business succeed. 12. Reflect, meaning to think carefully about something, often about your own actions or beliefs. Example, Li Wei finally took time to reflect on why he kept failing. Shadowing practice. Repeat this paragraph aloud, slowly, focusing on rhythm and natural pronunciation. He fixed one torn edge of fabric a customer had complained about. He remembered one regular buyer's name and her daughter's upcoming wedding. He corrected one mistake in his accounts that he had been ignoring for weeks. It felt small. It felt almost embarrassingly small. But he did it again the next day, and the day after that. Weeks became months. The stall did not transform overnight, and there were mornings he still felt the old pull toward giving up. But each time that feeling rose in his chest, he thought of a single bamboo seed pressed into cold soil, and he stayed. Final message. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, not because the first step is magical, but because it is the only one you can actually take today. Li Wei spent years chasing shortcuts before he understood what Master Chen already knew, that patience planted quietly will always outlast success chased loudly. Today you practiced English through this story, and hopefully you also found a small step worth taking in your own life. Keep learning English, keep discovering stories, and keep collecting wisdom from around the world.
If you enjoyed learning English through this ancient saying, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need this wisdom today. Until next time, keep learning English and keep collecting wisdom from around the world.